everyone. To begin our session, we are straight to part A, which focusing on the data flow diagram of the expenditure cycle. Before we answer the main question on this slide, we will present our evidence of the DFD construction directly inside Lookie chart so you can see exactly how we mapping out and build the data pyramid. Good day to our lecturer and classmates. Today, I will present for part A, the data flow diagram for Yesa Textile Sedia Berhad. This diagram shows how material and information move through the company production cycle. It tracks everything for the initial customer order to the final stage where finished clothes are sent to the warehouse. Let's look the 6 main steps in this process. First, process 1.0, prepare master production schedule, MPS. This process takes two pieces of information, customer order detail from the sales department and inventory level detail from our inventory file. The system combines this data to create the schedule, which is saved in the master production schedule file. Next, process 2.0, prepare bill of material, BOM. Uses the production schedule to figure out exactly what raw material are needed. The resulting bill of material detail are then saved directly into the BOM file. This brings us to process 3.0, prepare material request form. Here, the system creates 3 copies of the material request form. One copy is kept for our record in the material request file. The other 2 copies are sent out to the purchasing department and to the storeroom department. So, they are known to release the required material. In process 4.0, begin production operation. The actual sewing and assembly take place using the material transfer from the storeroom. If worker need more fabric or supplier during this stage, an additional material request is made, which goes back to update the BOM file. While production is running, we track labor in process 5.0. Prepare job time ticket. This track the hours employee work and send a job time ticket to the accounting department so they can calculate wages and payroll. Finally, once the clothes are finishing and packing, we are moved to process 6.0. Deliver finishing good. The finishing goods are physically moved and logging into the warehouse, which successfully completes the production cycle. To conclude, this DFD clearly maps out how information flow across different departments at Yesa Textile to keep operation organized.
Now moving on to part B, which focuses on expenditure cycle. Here we will analyze the case study details to identify the internal control weaknesses and discuss the suggested procedures. Now we are going to explain about 4 basic activities in expenditure cycle. First process is ordering goods, supplies and services. So this activity involves identifying inventory requirements when stock levels are low and officially placing an order with a vendor. The primary source documents used here are the purchase requisition and the purchase order. So in the case of Sedat Crispy Sdn Bhd, the process is initiated when administrative and operational employees notice low stock and enter purchase requests. The purchasing clerk then consolidates this into a single order and select a supplier from Johor or the internet base solely on the lowest price without requiring any management approval. So the second process is receiving materials, supplies and services. In this activity, it handles the physical arrival of shipments from suppliers. The receiving department is responsible for counting the goods, inspecting their quality and transferring them to a secure warehouse. The key source document generated is a receiving report. In the case of Sedat Crispy Berhad, the receiving clerk verifies the items against the supplier's packing slip. The physical goods are then sent to a locked storeroom, though this room remains accessible to any employee during regular working hours. Next, We have approving supplier invoice. In this activity, it involves verifying that the supplier's invoice is accurate and that the company is only paying for items that were actually ordered and received. This typically requires a three-way match between the supplier invoice, the original purchase order, and the internal receiving report to create a validated payment voucher. In this company, which is Sedap Kris Berhad, when the supplier's invoice arrives, the accounting clerk performs a basic two-way match by comparing the invoice directly against the supplier's package slip instead of using internal purchase orders and independent receiving reports. And the last process, we have cash disbursement. This is the final activity of the expenditure cycle, which involves executing the actual payment, which via check or cash or any electronic fund transfer to the supplier for approved invoices. This process aims to ensure timely payments, to secure vendors' discount while safeguarding cash against duplicate or unauthorized payments. In the case of Sedap Kris B. Sdn Bhd, the accounting department is responsible for the final verification and processing of payments once they receive the verified invoices from the accounting clerk.
Now, let's move on to question B. Based on these weaknesses in the case above, suggest control procedures that can be used to overcome the weaknesses. So, our first major weaknesses is the lack of restriction in making purchase requests. Currently, any employee from both administrative and operational department can freely enter purchase requests, which lead to potential unauthorized purchases, duplication, and overstocking. To fix this issue, we propose two crucial control procedures. First, company must implement a formal review and approval process for all purchase requisition. Only authorized personnel within specific department should be permitted to initiate requests, and this must be reviewed by a department manager before being forwarded to purchasing. Second, company may establish centralized purchasing to ensure requests are channeled through a designated department, rather than allowing any employee to enter requests randomly. Moving on to our second weakness, the absence of an authorized or approved list of suppliers. Right now, the purchasing clerk selects the suppliers based solely on internet searches for the lowest price, which increase the risk of fraud, poor quality goods, unreliable delivery, and compromised vendor data. To prevent these weaknesses, the control procedure that may be applied is establish and maintain an approved supplier list. The company should restrict purchasing activities exclusively to vendor on the list to prevent buying poor quality and unauthorized goods. Next, company can implement a strict evaluation process to review and approve purchases from new suppliers based on quality certification and competitive bid, rather than relying solely on an internet search for the lowest price. Our third weakness is no authorized on the order made by the clerk. As the case stands, the purchasing clerk is allowed to combine purchase requests and place orders directly with the supplier without any review from a high-level employee. This will increase the risk of errors, unauthorized purchases, over-ordering, and fraud. The clerk may also favor certain suppliers in exchange for personal benefits. To mitigate this weakness, we recommend the company to implement two strategic controls. The first is independent authorization and segregation of duties. Before any purchase order is sent to supplier, it should be reviewed and approved by an authorized manager, such as the procurement manager or administrative manager, to digitally sign off on all purchase orders. The second controls the established value threshold. The company should introduce an approval hierarchy based on the value of purchases. For example, orders below 2,000 ringgit require approval from supervisors, and orders above 2,000 ringgit require approval from a manager or director.
Moving on to point number 4, no copy of the order form being sent to the receiving clerk. The weakness here is that the receiving department relies entirely on the supplier's packing slip. This causes an impossibility to verify if the shipped quantities match with what was actually ordered, which can lead to an accepting unrequested or incorrect quantities. To address this, our control procedures involve two steps. First, ensure that an authorized purchase order is sent to the receiving department before the goods arrive. The receiving clerk must have access to a valid purchase order to ensure they only accept items that were legitimately ordered. Second, send a blind copy of the purchase order to the receiving clerk, where the order quantities are omitted. This forces the receiving employees to actually count and inspect the incoming delivery rather than relying on the printed numbers. Next, point number 5 addressed the issue of no restriction on access to the stock. Our current weaknesses is that any employee could access the locked room and remove the needed item during working hours. This completely compromises inventory security, leading to a high risk of theft, shrinkage, and unrecorded inventory movements. Our control procedure to mitigate this includes, first, strictly restricting physical access to inventory. The locked inventory room must remain secure at all times and only authorized storekeepers should be allowed to enter and handle the stock. And second, we must also document all inventory transfers meticulously. No items should be removed without a signed inventory requisition form to maintain proper segregation of duties between the custody of inventory and receiving or operating activities.
For the question C, possible fraud risk in the expenditure based on Lina's findings. The first one is excessive and unauthorized purchasing, where some items were ordered in quantities exceeding what the departments required. This issue arises since the employees intentionally took this action for their self-interest, which is for their personal gain and their personal benefits. The employee chose to conceal the mistake occurred, which made the inventory stolen due to their negligence. They didn't want to confront their mistake to the supervisor because they might afraid that they might be punished, or the worst case, maybe they will be get fired by the supervisor. Now, let's move to the impact to the company. The first one is it will cost a lot of wastage because the company need to spend a lot of money for their unnecessary inventory. Next, the company will lose company funds because the shareholders and the investors may retrieve their sponsors due to the unethical behavior of the employee. Last but not least, the company's image has been tarnished since the business activity might be dropped and they will face a lot of financial problems. The second one is fraudulent vendor scheme, where the new vendors with little track record were being given large contracts while reliable vendors were bypassed. This issue arises since the employees may receive a secret commission from untrusted vendors by receiving a reward for promoting supplier vendors. The employees also may have breached their professionalism, honesty, and transparency in fulfilling their duty by giving a large contract to a certain vendors with a lower price. Now, let's move to the effect to the company. The first one is, the company will produce a low quality of product, which give an effect by loss of customers' loyalty. Next, it will also damage the company's reputation because it will give a negative impact to the performance and the profitability of the company. Last but not least, the companies will also lose a reliable supplier because the supplier felt unfair and dissatisfied since the untrusted vendor will have the large contract with a lower price.
Next, we are continue to number 3, possible fraud risk in the expenditure based on Linda finding. Inaccurate or inappropriate payment. Supporting documents that do not match actual delivery during the processing of payment will result in the company paying for goods that were never received or paying incorrect amount. This could involve invoice fraud, duplicate payment, or collaboration between employee and supplier.
Next, I will present our evidence and documentation for this project. Appendix A shows our group collaboration through WhatsApp, where we communicated and discussed our group progress. Appendix B shows our task delegation, where we distributed the tasks among group members. Appendix C presents our DFD construction using the C chart. Appendix D shows our slide management activity logs in Canva during the presentation preparation. Moving on, Appendix E shows our mid-production slide design workspace in Canva. Lastly, Appendix F shows our video editing workspace in CapCut. These documents serve as proof of our teamwork and the process involved in completing this project. Thank you.
I just had to let you know you're